Okay, great. It's move this. Okay. So, it's the 23rd of April, 2020. I'm just in the evening, so it's almost 11 p.m. right now. About to go to bed. Have read of a few books. I'm reading two books. So it's Super Forecasters. I saw a clip by Dominic Cummings, who actually recommended this. So I thought it'd be interesting to read, to see to see what the chief advisor to the UK Prime Minister thinks. And then the other one was 0 to 1, was something I just found on some book list quite a while ago. And you can see that one of my bookmarks is actually a train ticket from the, I'm not sure whether it says, but it should say, yes, the 7th of January, when I went to London for some conference, probably, as I usually do. And that was in the middle of exams. Then the last thing on my bedside stand is an essay competition, and it says, so what fundamental economic and political change, if any, is needed for an effective response to climate change? Now, that's a pretty tough question. I was thinking about talking about SDG number 17, the Social Development Goals by the United Nations, and the 17th one, which is coincidentally the final one, is about public-private partnership. And something I've been finding very recently has been trying to align the interests and the incentives that capitalism brings in our Western world with the societal benefits and the societal welfare and the long-term vision for our society. And so this recently has been been growing a lot, and CEOs have been doing a lot, and investors as well have been more interested in this kind of stuff. But I was doing a case study competition a few months ago with a couple of friends. It was about Novo Nordisk, a Danish company, I believe, for a big pharma company. They work on diabetes. And what I noticed was that fundamentally their business model is just based on each person that we cure is actually revenue. But I thought, how can we change the pharma industry, for example, to change it from a curative model to a preventative model, where they would actually make more money by selling preventions as opposed to cures. And then by changing it that way, that would seriously incentivize that industry, for example, beyond just welfare and goodwill of the CEOs and goodwill of the investors as well, into an industry that fundamentally doesn't just do a lot of good and a lot of profit, but really incentivizes both and brings welfare to the whole world. So that's just what's on my mind today on the 23rd of April. Let's see how it goes. This evening was interesting. Had dinner, was watching some historical clips by Gary Vaynerchuk, because he started vlogging or making videos about wine and other topics back in 2007. So it was very interesting to see what the difference was between back then and today. And then Africa. Really. Yeah, really looking to Africa for the future. Not sure how to get into it, but if I had to think back, what would somebody who doesn't know an industry and doesn't know how to get into it, what would they do to try and get into it? I mean, there's a few things. Think about network. So expanding my network, I'm probably going to reach out to quite a few people who are interested in Africa. I watched a webinar by Chatham House today. Some very interesting speakers that were talking about the COVID-19 emergency in Africa, and I think I need to rewatch that. And then there was about 400 people who were watching live, and I need to write to every person who put a question and read the question, rewatch everything, and then put an interesting comment. I've screenshotted all of the names, so I have all of those to write to them. And then, so I would say reaching out to people, networks, consuming, so learning about Africa, and then creating content. I think primarily with a podcast. So Marco Meets would seem like a real good example. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I can probably create a bit of content using my pictures. I took these when I went to Ivory Coast to see my dad, Côte d'Ivoire, to see my dad when he was working there a couple of summers ago. It was really great. I really enjoyed taking pictures, so it was an awesome experience just driving around, taking pictures, documenting. Yeah, just something I'm passionate about because I spent a couple of years in Africa as I was growing up, and I think it really hit me, and just I think it has huge potential for the future and be really good to be involved in that and really change the world, because that's where I think a lot of impact can be made. Because whereas with Europe and the Western world, it's very hard to have very big impact. It's a lot of marginal improvements, which is really good and which does help. And it is at the frontier of technologies, etc. I think with Africa, because we can leapfrog certain technologies from one end to the other, that's where the real potential is. And I'm looking to do that, and I'm writing my thesis on the energy sector. And yeah, so let's see how the thesis goes. Should be cool, should be good. Done quite a bit of reading, got quite a few printouts. I'm just transcribing them into a single essay, and it's very much a policy piece for Mozambique and the energy sector there. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. Yeah. So yeah, just a wee rant. See you tomorrow. And tomorrow, I'll be looking to transcribe all of the papers, all of them, even the ones printed that are in my drawer over there. Take all of those and put them into my main document, so that I have all the information integrated, divided by topic, because I look at the context, I look at what the current energy sector is, production and consumption in the different industry, residential, and then production in terms of what microgrids are being used, if coal is being used, if hydropower is being exported to South Africa, for example. And then looking to the future and how stuff can change. So how are consumption patterns going to change? Look at transmission lines and see, is there a new way to do this, as opposed to having transmission lines everywhere, so connected from the power plant to every single city and town? What if individual towns had their own production centers, and that would save a lot of the energy that's being wasted by transporting the energy from the power plant to the individual towns? And then lessons learned: India, South Africa, water heating panels, and seeing how effective those are. Yeah, that's my thesis so far. And then tomorrow, very exciting, have a FinSim call. We'll be pitching to one client, hopefully for quite a sizable project for the summer, which is very exciting. And then just doing some outreach, helping out the other intern, keep guiding him. He's on the right track. He's doing really well so far. I think we're just about finishing setting up all the admin, so that we can really go in and smash it and write to lots of companies, give a lot of value to them, offer them a new program, something new that they might not have thought of before, and really, yeah, live life, have fun. Yeah, just doing side projects, and that really helps. And then there's a few like park projects. One of them being Migrants Might, which is my way of saying, what can we do with migrants from sub-Saharan Africa who've gone totally traversing the Mediterranean? Number one. And number two, how do we address the problem, really? Because the initial response is, let's block the borders, and the recent governments have decided, okay, maybe that's not the most effective thing. We'll try and do that in some sense, but then let's go do development in Africa. But I think the real thing is, we need to make sure that we outbid and outcompete the people smugglers that take people through the Sahel, from sub-Saharan Africa through the Sahara Desert all the way north to Libya, and then on a boat and jump across the Mediterranean. We need to make sure that these people, these Senegalese people from Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, etc., we need to see them almost as a consumer. We need to say, okay, what options do they have when they decide to embark on this journey? And I think that if the Italian government provides a training scheme which costs even half as much as what the people smugglers are asking, which would pay for the training scheme and would actually give Italy very negligible but some kind of fund, and it would limit the number of applicants, and we make sure that all of these people are registered so that then they pay taxes, on the work they do. It really means they have an actual living wage. They're not working as essentially slaves on some agricultural farms around Italy. So there's a lot of benefits, and then I really don't see why it's not being done. I spoke to a politician a few months ago when I went to a meetup with one of the Italian political parties in London. He said, he's a Europarlamentarian, said perfectly possible. Yeah, it just needs to be worked out. So I'm going to make a proposal for that, make a working team within the political party to talk through that, see if there's any issues, make a solid proposal written in Italian, like, because I've drafted one in English for public consumption. And the other thing was creating a STEM PPE. So looking at how can we change education, because digital and tech are becoming such prevalent themes, and governance, policy, government, and the leadership in the corporate are really having to face these challenges. For example, cyber is a huge thing right now. Everybody's using Zoom calls, etc. And a lot of this information that was in mouth is completely confidential because people can't travel or don't travel nearly as much, and it's not as accessible to travel. They have to transmit that safely, and people are logging in and accessing sensitive data from their homes, which means that there needs to be some kind of end-to-end encryption and make sure that nowhere there is a breach. So thinking about STEM, because so far humanities have been the prevalent political class. People who study humanities have been the prevalent components of the political class, and I think that there's no reason why people who study STEM shouldn't. Perhaps it's a choice, but I think it's both a choice and how they're viewed, and how people, especially in Italy, in a very orthodox mentality, view people who haven't studied economics and assume that somebody who hasn't studied economics won't understand the economy. There's a sort of fallacy and dichotomy where somebody who studied economics must know everything possible about the economy, and somebody who hasn't doesn't. But then it's not just economics, it's also business, where when the government is making policies, it's a lot more about business than economics. And then in terms of all the technical knowledge for economics, you have advisors, just like you have advisors for the military, and it's not, and no prime minister so far has been a military person. So, since Mussolini came to power, so it's about changing culture and trying to find ways to do that. It should be a very interesting journey. These were my thoughts today. It's been Marco Conticini, and 13 minutes in, we'll be signing off. See you later.